Hello, and welcome to Decoding Risk, where we give you expert insights on trending topics in the insurance industry. I'm your host, Edward Promley, one of the marketing content managers here at Fusable, and today we're talking about shipper safety. In the commercial auto industry, when there's a crash, everyone tied to the load can be pulled into the claim, including shippers. So the question is, as a shipper, are you doing enough to protect yourself and your customers? Joining us for our episode today is Chad Krueger, our Vice President and Managing Director of our Risk Intelligence here at Fusable. Welcome, Chad.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Ed.
Now, you've been a guest on here before, but do you mind just giving us a quick overview again on your background in the trucking insurance space?
Yeah, absolutely. After college, I worked as a safety director at a trucking company. I focused on the OSHA and the DOT side of things. From there, I had the opportunity to work for one of the world's largest insurance brokers, where I focused on fleets of all types. And then I went to work for an insurance carrier for a number of years, where I first had contact with Central Analysis Bureau and their cab reports. And from there, I got recruited by the folks at Central Analysis Bureau, and I've been here for the last 7 years.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode. I think this is going to be a great discussion. So, Chad, why can't shippers just leave safety up to the brokers or assume regulators have it covered?
Well, we're in a very litigious environment. And for those of us that do highway travel and things like that, you certainly see a lot of signs that are out on the highway for trucking lawyers and things like that. And generally, when there's an accident, even if it's not really that bad of an accident, anybody associated with that load or anybody associated with that truck can get pulled into that particular claim or the lawsuit. And shippers are one of those. The freight broker, the people that change the tires, all the folks are kind of pulled into that process, and it's quite expensive. And then folks are spending money to try to remove themselves from the claim. But then you run into whether or not that becomes possible depending on the situation. And we've seen a couple of examples relatively recently where you've had some pretty big claims that or crashes that end up on the news, and they end up being a really big deal, and anybody associated with that load ends up getting pulled into that particular claim or that lawsuit, depending on where it ends up.
So huge liability exposure, and I'm assuming can also put your reputation at risk if these things happen under your watch. Is that correct?
Yep, and the way it's worked over the years is that a freight broker will set up a contract with a shipper, and then that they'll be responsible for basically brokering those loads to motor carriers out there. And over the years, the freight brokers have kind of paid attention to different things, but normally, as long as that motor carrier had a satisfactory or conditional authority, they were legal, they had insurance, the government said they could operate. They basically looked at that is a safe motor carrier, or that is a motor carrier that can transport the load. So they will shuffle those loads out to those motor carriers, and they'll be moved. What we're seeing out there is that shippers and freight brokers and different organizations are being held responsible for the safety of those motor carriers they're providing those loads to. So we obviously at Central Analysis Bureau, we focus on basic safety scores. We aggregate a lot of different safety data from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And one of the things that we're seeing is these shippers are trying very hard to start to understand, well, Mr. Freight Broker, I've got a contract to give you all of these loads. I should probably be paying attention to who those motor carriers are that you're providing those loads to. So run into those situations and you hear about them on the news where the motor carrier has X number of brake violations and tire violations and speed violations and things like that out there. The shipper needs to figure out a way, and so does the freight broker, to make sure that they're in a defensible position. And one of the things that can help with that, and these are shippers that are coming to us actually, and they're saying, hey, we know you guys create the basics, you guys recreate the basic scores. We know that you've got all this additional data that can help us understand what a safe motor carrier standard is. And then they'll work with us to monitor those motor carriers that are being used by the freight brokers. They'll actually set standards. They'll use different tools that we're able to provide. And actually, we customize a lot of tools for the folks out there as well, too, where perhaps there's a certain type of a crash rate or a basic score or a type of violation that they're not comfortable with, that they will basically relay that to their freight brokers. The freight brokers will have a minimal safety standard that will be set by the shipper that the freight broker will need to make sure that they're enforcing out within their shipper, their motor carrier network. Our tools also allow that shipper and the freight brokers to be able to monitor those motor carriers to ensure that those standards are being followed. So perhaps you've got a motor carrier that falls outside of the standards. Well, they don't get a load. They don't get a load until they get themselves back to the minimal standards that are the minimal safety standards that are set by that shipper or that freight broker.
So that sounds like that we have the tools to help these shippers set a gold standard in terms of safety for their freight brokers and then for that, their motor carriers as well. Is that the case?
We do it, and ultimately, part of what it is that we do is we help folks understand the risk and exposure associated with the motor carriers that they're doing business with, and this is a way that we help that the shipping and the freight broker, the clients out there to be able to, again, what are your safety standards? What is an acceptable uh, basic score or number of speed violations or English language proficiency violations or something to that effect that you're going to be comfortable with in order to be able to load that motor carrier with your goods.
Okay, so what's at stake then for shippers who don't have this kind of safety process in place?
Yeah, so there's a number of different things that could go on, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's the legal environment out there that can cause people to be or organizations to be pulled into these particular claims and being able to determine, do we have a defensible position or not? Can we get ourselves, removed from this claim, or if we stay a part of the claim, are we in a defensible position? When they get into those cases, they start assigning percentages to different people involved in the claim, and that can get really expensive and messy. And that's where, again, understanding what is acceptable for you as a shipper or a freight broker that is going to make sure that we're in a defensible position to be able to continue our business. And that's part of what it is. We want to make sure that the organizations that we work with are financially viable. Similar with the insurance carriers that we work in, we help them write profitable insurance. We want to help the shippers and freight brokers out there manage their business to reduce the propensity for loss in order to make sure that they're around for the long term.
So, for any shippers listening today who want to raise their safety standards, what's the first step they can take to do that?
One of the first things that they can do is they can ultimately they can reach out to us. We can help them understand the different tools and solutions that we've got available. We can talk to them about different experiences we've had working with businesses like theirs to help them make sure that they're setting their safety standard. And it is a little bit of an underwriting process, right? You as the business are determining who it is that is going to be able to transport your loads, and setting those minimal standards and holding those standards in place will help you in the long run. We've got an opportunity actually coming up. Pam Jones, who's been on your podcast before, to out there with an opportunity to speak with the network of employers for transportation safety. And that's a number of the big organizations out there where they're trying to move safety from the top down. They're concerned about all of the safety on the road. And this is one of the things that we're going to be talking about that organization. They've asked us to talk to them about, hey, how can we understand safety from the macro level and push that down throughout our networks to ensure that we are part of what makes the road safer?
That sounds like an excellent opportunity for shippers in the industry. And I think that this has been such a fruitful conversation. To kind of summarize, I'm hearing, for shippers, don't assume safety and set the standard yourself. You're going to protect yourself from any legal challenges in the future. You're going to protect your reputation, and you're just going to make sure that loads get to where they need to go on time. Anything on top of that? Anything else to add?
Ultimately the goal, and we're very fortunate where we get to work with organizations that are trying to keep the roads safe, and that's what it's all about. We've all got kids, family members, spouses, just people we love operating on the roads, and as shippers and freight brokers, part of our responsibility to the industry is making sure that we're using and promoting safety all the way throughout our transportation network. And this is one of the ways that we can help.
Fantastic. Well, for anyone listening who wants to learn more about how CAB can help shippers improve their safety and set that standard, I'll leave some links in the description. And thank you so much, Chad, for joining us today. Keep your eye out for our next episode coming next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much.